kids aren't like, oh, you're sensory sensitive, I'll be quiet. Like kids are still loud and busy and in your face. Part of her being successful as a teacher means taking care of her nervous system throughout the day. Our self-care plan we put into place for her was to lay down in her classroom in the dark with a 1-minute timer every time the kids were out of her room. So they went to a special or they went to lunch, just lay down in the dark for a minute on your back and do nothing. Give your nervous system that tune-out break.
Well, hello there, and welcome back to the Terri Cole Show. I have a very fascinating interview to share with you today from an author. Alyssa Campbell is her name, and she's the best-selling author of a book you probably heard of called Teeny Humans, Big Emotions. She also has her own podcast, Voices of Your Village podcast, and she has a master's degree in early childhood education. Her book that's out right now, well, it's called Big Kids, Bigger Feelings, Navigating Defiance, Meltdowns, Anxiety to Raise Confident, Connected Kids. So who doesn't want that? I know we all do, because her first book was focused more on smaller kids. And then suddenly people were like, hello? Now they keep growing and I need guidance, which is what inspired her to create this book. And we talked about everything, how to help anybody stop melting down, right? She talked more about beyond the 5 senses, and that most people know about the 5 senses, but there's 4 additional senses that she tells us about in this interview that's super helpful. Really, the whole focus of the interview was about nervous system regulation. And I feel like everything that applies to kids in reality applies to adults too. So I hope that you enjoy this interview with Alyssa Campbell as much as I enjoyed interviewing her. You guys, I'm so excited. We have a big conversation about big kids and bigger feelings today with, I am going to say Alyssa Blask Campbell. I guess I am. I guess I'm going to say the whole thing. Welcome to the Terri Cole Show, Alyssa.
Thank you, and you nailed it. I'm stoked to be here with you.
Right on. Oh, so many things to talk about. But what I love to start with is, all of us come to this work, whatever the work is, for so many specific reasons. And what brought you here? This is not your first book. You have a New York Times bestseller with your first book. So let's talk about what brought you to this place of writing this book in your life right now.
Yeah. I mean, this work in general for me really came from, I wasn't raised with these tools. And then I found myself as a teacher trying to teach things I didn't really have. And I would be like, trying to teach kids to do things as I'm not doing them, which we know is not an effective way to teach.
Right.
And yelling at kids to be quiet, for instance. And so I really that was huge for me. I grew up in a culture and in a household with phenomenal parents where I didn't get these tools growing up. And then the big impetus for me was that I experienced some trauma when I was 14 and had no outlet for processing that. I was basically treading water to stay afloat until I got to my 20s and found therapy, and then ultimately found my way into doing research in how to build emotional intelligence. And it fully changed how I got to live my life, and then got to serve this up with families and teachers to children and see how it shifts how they get to live their lives. And after Tiny Humans was out in the world, we got so many requests for this of okay, this makes total sense for a tantruming toddler or whatever. What do we do with the 9-year-old who's like a teenager?
Yep.
And rolling their eyes and slamming the door and whatnot. And so it just really naturally was led to this place of people asking for this exact resource.
So cool. We were talking off camera before we started the interview about how your first book, Teeny Humans, Big Emotions, was out for, did you say 22 months?
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah.
And then became a New York Times bestseller. So talk a little bit about the fire that, how did that happen? Because that really is quite a phenomenon that speaks to the accessibility. To me, it speaks to the accessibility of the work, but also the need for what you're doing. How parents are like, I need a North Star. I need help. I literally don't know how to do this. And if nobody teaches you, especially when people want to do it consciously or do it differently than their parents did. So tell us a little bit about how that happened, and then we'll get into big kids, bigger feelings.
Yeah, it truly like it got out into the world initially and we just kept talking about it. I kept going from place to place and doing little pop-up events here, speaking at this conference there, and it just got into more and more hands. And from there, as people were reading it and it was serving them, they started sharing it with their communities, which for me means so much in that we didn't market this book for them. They said this is really helpful for me and we take neuroscience and make it accessible. We look at how do you understand your unique nervous system, how your child's unique brain and body work, and respond to that human. That our book is not a one size fits all. It's how do you understand who you are and who the kid in front of you is so that you know what's the right way to respond to them. And one thing that we kept seeing as people were sharing it was exactly that they're like, oh, I have 2 kids or I have 4 kids and all of them are different. And all these other parenting books are like, here, do this, try this, say this. And we're like, yeah, that might work for one of your kids or maybe 2 of them. And
Right.
what happens for the other ones? And so really our work is more about diving into how do you understand the unique child in front of you and then what might work for them.
All right. So there's a need to go from the first book with littler kids to this book, which is bigger kids. So you guys, this came out 2 days ago. You can get it everywhere fine books are sold. Big Kids, Bigger Problems, Navigating Defiance, Meltdowns, Anxiety to Raise Confident, Connected Kids. So that's the book. It's in the world right now. So if you have kids, if you're like, wow, I could use some help, you have help. There's a whole book to help you. I have questions about what gets activated in parents. Like, because I'm a therapist mostly for grown people who a lot of times have grown kids and, or even grandparenting. But the teenage years, I would always get so many questions because it was so activating. So the separation and individuation of the kid, so being mouthy, having an attitude, slamming a door, would be so activating that even the ones who said, I'm not going to do what my parents did, or I'm not going to say what they said because it was super not helpful, find themselves doing what their parents did and saying what their parents said. So what are your thoughts on this phenomenon?
Mostly, I think that makes total sense. Like I wrote in Tiny Humans, Big Emotion, my first book, that sometimes I open my mouth and my mom comes out. And like sometimes it's great, right?
Right.
Sometimes I totally want to pass that thing on. But like sometimes I've spent a lot of time, money, and therapy trying to not pass that on.
Yeah.
I want to start with like, first of all, it makes sense to open your mouth and have your mom, your dad, your grandparents, your teachers come out. That we are most of the day living from our subconscious brain. We're in habit and pattern mode. We need to. It's exhausting to live in your conscious brain. And I think about this where if you start a new job or you move to a new house and the first couple weeks, you might even use like Google Maps to get to your new job because you haven't done this route a lot of times. And then all of a sudden you're driving there and you don't even remember the drive. You don't need directions. It's from your subconscious. It is a habit at that point. You've done it so many times that it's a habit. And it's a real gift when we can operate from our subconscious because it takes a lot of energy to think about every step, every literal turn throughout the day. And so when we can file more and more things into, okay, I don't have to use my full brain for this, it's very helpful for our energy. And so when we're in the day to day, when we're making dinner, we're picking kids up from school, they're coming back after practice, and we're in that subconscious kind of habit forming part of our brain, it takes a different level of intention to say, oh, my kid just rolled their eyes and slammed the door or yelled that I'm the stupidest mom to walk the planet. And now to access my conscious brain where I choose how I'm going to respond instead of doing it from habit requires energy and
Yeah.
capacity. And so many of us are treading water to stay afloat. We don't have extra energy or capacity. And that's why so much of our work is about the neuroscience, because we're working to help folks understand, how do you recharge yourself throughout the day in micro moments, rather than like, okay, I went on this run for 30 minutes this morning. Hopefully by 5 p.m., that's still helping me regulate. Like,
Right.
that's not how our nervous system works.
Right.
And so we're looking at, how do you access these micro moments throughout the day that help you regulate for your unique nervous system? That, for instance, my husband and I have vastly different nervous systems. What we need for self-care to regulate our nervous system throughout the day are different things. And until you know what do you need, you're kind of just shooting in the dark, hoping like, maybe this thing will help me in 2 hours to come when my kids come home. And we're really helping folks understand what actually is going to be helpful for you, and how do you achieve that in 1 minute here and there.
Right. I love it. All right. So let's talk about you created these 5 steps to regulate your nervous system. Can we go through that? Because I think this is really the tangible stuff where you're like, okay, when I'm in this situation, like trying to do these things almost before you're in the situation.
Yeah,
But anyway,
that's
tell
right.
me all about it, please.
Totally. So they're both preventative and reactive. Like in the moment, we're going to look at, how do we go through these kind of, it's like my mental checklist of like, where are these 5 for ourselves and for kids? So we're looking at, we call it the facts. Food is first and foremost. Oh my gosh, we were on vacation with my kids, all the humans, and it was about 10 a.m. and everybody's a disaster. We all kind of hate each other in this moment. And I was like, what is going on? And my husband was like, well, we had donuts for breakfast and came to the beach. So probably we're all on like a sugar crash and we just need some food that's going to help us. The food plays such a huge role in how regulated am I? Am I hangry? Is it almost dinner time and I just like need some food? Or did I have that donut for breakfast and went to the beach and I'm on a sugar crash now and I need something to support my nervous system? So looking first and foremost at food. Where are we in the food cycle? Activity. This is where we get nerdy. We look at your 9 sensory systems. We often hear of our first 5: sight, sound, taste, touch, smell. We have 4 others. We have interoception. This lets us know, are you hungry? Are you tired? Do you have to go to the bathroom? It also is those internal feelings cues like, oh, my heart's beating fast, or I'm feeling clammy or sweaty. Like, oh, I might be feeling frustrated or overwhelmed or embarrassed or mad. Those like internal cues. We have our proprioceptive sense. This lets us know where our body is in space. And I have lower proprioceptive awareness. What this means is that I like bump into things all the time. It's like I'm walking by my corner of my bed has not moved since we moved to this house,
Right.
but I seem to hit it quite often. And it's really that like my body has a hard time knowing where I end and something else begins. With that, I have a really small space bubble. Like I love to come up and snuggle, or I could have a massage for like 4 days and I'm like, I want more. Like, give me all that. My husband has high proprioceptive awareness. He can like navigate the bobbing and weaving of life pretty easily. And he has a bigger space bubble where he's like, yeah, you're close enough. And there are very few humans who can come into his space bubble. And even those humans, he can get touched out. And then we have our vestibular sense. It's located in your inner ear. It's responsible for your movement and balance. Keeps you upright, basically. And if you're vestibular sensitive, you could get like motion sickness, vertigo, those sorts of things. If you're vestibular seeking, you're going to be looking for ways to kind of spin, or my husband sits in like a swivel office chair that can swivel back and forth. It can also kind of bounce. He's vestibular seeking. I'm vestibular sensitive. This chair is stationary. I'm not going anywhere. And that's by design. We have our neuroceptive sense is our final one. This is what I call our spidey sense. It is so key in keeping us safe. It like reads the energy of the room. You know, if you've ever like walked into a room and 2 people were like arguing in conflict and they stop arguing, but you can feel that tension and you're like, oh, this is awkward. That's your neuroceptive sense. It's saying like, ooh, the energy in the room here is off. Pay attention to that. Our energy readers, our neuroceptive sensitive humans, are really aware of this to the point where we can see codependency, where they need the energy to be regulated in order for them to feel calm. We can also see empathy, where they can be really empathetic humans. They really notice if your face is off. Maybe you come in and you say, yeah, I'm fine. And they're the humans that are like, yeah, you're really not fine.
Yeah.
And they stay and they come in and check in with you. Versus the other human who's like, oh yeah, I noticed that they said they're not fine, or that they are fine in a not fine way, but I'm going to keep moving through my day, and it doesn't shake them as much.
Right.
Our neuroceptive sensitive humans are energy readers. And so when we look at all 9, we're looking at, what are you sensitive to? What drains you? And then what are you seeking? What recharges you? And for all of us, that's different.
It's so interesting to have a recipe, though, for who you are. I find that in my crew, there's a lot of super empaths. So the ability to, obviously, and highly sensitive folks. So for me personally, the ability to, of course, know when someone is not fine, even when they say they're fine. Obviously, that is easy all these years later. But more than that, like things that it's not even a skill. It's like someone who I see 3 times a year, I'll notice that they got a haircut. Like you know what I mean? Where I'll literally say,
Yep.
I'm not trying to notice they got a haircut. I don't care that they got a haircut, right? So I'm like, why is that? Why is my brain doing that? I don't get it. But it's being, in a way, hyper dialed into surroundings, people, and energy, which of course, if you, I don't know, I've done enough therapy work to have it be a positive rather than a negative, but it can also be, if you're a super empath, I've seen in my therapy practice, exhausting because there's no discernment about where you're
Totally.
just flooding energy.
And what you're describing is even beyond that neuroceptive sense of reading the energy, the visual sensitivity to notice somebody's haircut and remember this is what, so I'm not visually sensitive. For me, my absolute nightmare is that I'm involved in some capacity in like a crime scene and I have to answer any details. Like, what color was the car? Was that person? I'm like, was there a car? I didn't even clock a car. My husband is like you, visually sensitive. And so he could like draw the car and the license plate and whatever. And I won't have even remembered that there had been a car. I'm not visually sensitive. I don't notice the details in my space in a visual way. I'm sound sensitive. So for me, if there's sound that I'm not in control of, and like bless him, he's lovely, but I married a drummer. And so there's just so much tapping in my life. Like, whew. And when he's
You're like,
tapping,
please stop.
bless up. When he's tapping the song in his head and it's like, I don't know, 8:30 in the morning and things are chill and I've had a good night of sleep, it's fine. I can filter it with the other stimuli. When he's doing that at like 5:30, 6 p.m. and my kids are melting down and everyone's just like hangry, then I want a divorce because then I am just so beyond my capacity in that moment and he's further draining it.
Right.
And so when we're looking at this, understanding what are we sensitive to lets us know what is draining us and then what recharges us lets us know how do we access those micro moments throughout the day that he sits in a swivel chair so he can get that vestibular input because he's vestibular seeking. I have a walking pad under my desk to walk because I'm proprioceptive seeking.
Yeah.
Our needs throughout the day are different. And if I did the same thing he did, only one of us would have the capacity at the end of the day that we need for the kids and for each other. And so much of this in the activity part of the FACS framework comes down to who are you? How does your nervous system work? And we put a QR code in the book, Big Kids, Bigger Feelings, that goes to a questionnaire that's totally free. Anyone can access it. It's seedquiz.com.
Great.
And it helps you understand your nervous system. You can take it as many times as you want for kids, for partners, etc., to really get a picture of who are you? How do you move through the world? What's going to be draining? What's going to be recharging for you? We worked with a group of occupational therapists to put that together. Yeah, so that's the A part of the FACS framework. And then we move into C for connection. And this is where we dive into the connection blueprint that, again, it's not one size fits all in terms of how we receive connection. And for one of my kids, for instance, they love to just like be in a group and be chatting and be touching. And that feels really connecting to them. The other one is sensory sensitive and gets really overwhelmed in a group. And so for them, connection really looks like quiet downtime together. That if it is quieter, they can share about their day, or we can play a game and just have like a calmer space. That's how they feel connected. Versus my daughter's like, yeah, let's go to a concert and like hang. And she's like, yeah, let's go. My son's like, yeah, no, thank you. And so for connection, we really dive into what's their connection blueprint, and are they high connection seeking? To fill my son's connection cup is way faster and easier than my daughter's. She's a high connection seeker. She starts the morning looking for connection from the moment she wakes up. And if she doesn't get connection in the way that she receives it, it can feel like a leaky cup. That it's like, oh my gosh, we just did this thing together. And she's like, yeah, but I didn't get to like share my thoughts with you or come beyond your body in some capacity or holding your hand or whatever. And so really looking at like, who is this child and how do they receive connection? And the tricky part is when the way that we give connection is different than the way that they receive it. That for my daughter and I are a match. We're a sensory match and a connection match. And so for me to fill her cup is so much easier because I can do it from my subconscious brain. My son is a sensory mismatch for me and a connection mismatch. So for him, I have to be in my conscious brain to meet his needs.
But how amazing that, and we're gonna keep going. We're moving in from connection to tuning out. But how amazing that there's a process that can make your children make sense. But of course, I'm also looking at this from the point of view of making us make sense too. And I feel like almost everything in this book, it's applicable to the grown-ups. And it's sort of like put your own oxygen mask on first, right? Try to really go take the test. Just go take the quiz and see what comes up for you. The more you know about yourself, the easier it is to understand why also you feel the way you do about kids. Because we do feel differently about kids, of course, because we are matched and mismatched. And it doesn't mean we don't love them all. Of course we do. But there's something real about that. Okay, so let's talk about tune out and sleep.
Yeah. So tune out is, you know, when you're like, oh my gosh, I'm so overstimulated and all I want is to like lay in a dark room where no one's talking to me or touching me and just leaving me alone. This is my version of like, I need everyone to stop saying mama for like 14 seconds because I'm going to explode. That's the tune out. How are we? And it doesn't have to be a long time. It can be 1 minute. In fact, we do a lot of work with schools, elementary, middle schools. And we were doing this work with an elementary school teacher who is sensory sensitive. And kids aren't like, oh, you're sensory sensitive, I'll be quiet. Like kids are still loud and busy and in your face. And so part of her being successful as a teacher means taking care of her nervous system throughout the day. Our self-care plan we put into place for her was to lay down in her classroom in the dark with a 1-minute timer every time the kids were out of her room. So they went to a special or they went to lunch, before she talked to anybody, before she did any lesson planning, before she looked at her phone, just lay down in the dark for a minute on your back and do nothing. Give your nervous system that tune out break. And she had been like fried, on the verge of burning out, didn't think she wanted to stay in the field, having a really hard time navigating the classroom. And within a week, we got an email from her that was like, I hate how effective this is. That really, she's like, I thought I needed to change careers and I just needed to lay in the dark for a minute a couple times a day. Like that is her self-care plan as a sensory sensitive human. That's the tune out piece, is just shutting everything down for 1 minute, for 30 seconds. It doesn't have to be a 15-minute meditation to be successful.
Go ahead.
Yeah. No, just like that. I think we often think it has to be this like big beastly thing to be helpful. And so then we are like, I can't figure out a time to build that in my schedule. And so I'll do nothing. And the micro moments are huge.
Absolutely. And I love micro moments are so doable, right? I mean, so now we're also like, oh, I can be set up to succeed instead of set up to fail. Because when it's like, we need to quit your job and move to India, you're like, okay, well, great, but I can't. So I guess I'm not doing anything. I had a question about, because I'm finishing writing this book on father wounds, basically, and wondering about, because I talk about nervous system stuff, of course, in the book and how to do it, but wondering if there, and I'm sure it's out there, but if you know of any sort of studies that are done on like childhood injuries and adulthood nervous systems.
Yeah. So, what we know about the nervous system from the injury piece, there are two parts of our sensory system, two of the nine senses that can shift with time. For the most part, the nervous system you're born with is the nervous system you have, with the exception of these two. Your vestibular system, as you age, starts to go. It also can be shifted with pregnancies, where it's why
So that's the
elderly
balance.
folks are.
Is that?
Yep, exactly.
Okay.
That's why elderly folks are more likely to fall, because your vestibular system kind of starts to go. And the other is neuroceptive. Neuroceptive responds to trauma. So your neuroceptive sense, that spidey sense, is designed to be heightened to keep us safe. And so if you have wounds, if you've experienced trauma, lowercase t or capital T trauma, your nervous system is designed to say, oh, remember when we were over by that stove and we touched it and we got burned? That was hot. We're not going to do that again. So my spidey sense when I'm near the stove says, ooh, high alert. We were just at a campfire, a little bonfire recently, and a kid came running by the fire and three adults were like, hey, that's too close to be running next to the fire. We all immediately like stepped up and kept this kid alive. That's your neuroceptive sense that has learned that. And so with our wounds, your neuroceptive sense is designed to have that spidey sense heighten wherever those wounds are. And it doesn't have to stay that way. The brain is retrainable, which is so cool.
Thank God.
But thank God, but it is designed to keep us safe. And so it doesn't discern between what's capital T trauma or lower T trauma. It says, oh, that wasn't safe. We're not going to repeat that, whether it's physically safe, emotionally safe. And this is where the trigger of teens and middle childhood can come so hot for parents, because we know what it feels like to be left out, to be embarrassed in front of a class when you're trying to read the thing and you can't pronounce the word, or you're having this like read aloud in class. And for me, I was always like reading my paragraph ahead of time, ignoring everything else that's happening. Just like, how do I memorize this so I don't sound like an idiot? And then inevitably, like it's a different paragraph when it comes to me and I stumble over a word. And that embarrassment, that feeling of being left out when you're not invited to something or you don't make the team, the disappointment, the frustration, the anxiety or fear. And when we know that feeling, our neuroceptive sense is going to be heightened even when it's our kids experiencing it, because we're going to say, ooh, yikes, I want to prevent you from having to experience this. That's what our neuroceptive sense does for us. And it will then carry over to us projecting this onto our kids, which is why these middle childhood years and teen years become so hard, because emotionally our neuroceptive sense says, no, don't do that. That's not safe. And then we find ourselves being like, oh, should I call Sarah's parents to make sure my daughter's included in this TikTok dance thing that all these kids are doing that my daughter wasn't included in? Because we don't want her to feel left out, because we know what that feels like.
It's interesting from a psychological, we're looking at it from a evolutionary and educational point of view is what we're talking about now, but also from a psychological point of view. How much of the time are we having a transference? How much is our unresolved, activated, let's say, wounds from childhood getting activated with kids? And I find in my therapy practice, like, we got to go in before we go out. And that every age of development, as you're parenting children, whatever unresolved shit you have yourself at that age, they're going to activate it. So for me,
coming in hot.
Right. Say it again.
It's coming in hot.
Literally, there was no stopping it. And it's what's funny for me is that it was things that I don't even know that I knew, like things that I had fully repressed, things that were in the basement of my mind, just hiding. And I became a bonus mom to 3 teenage sons all at the same time. And so just starting to parent them, every age made me look at my parents and be like, how are you asleep on a Tuesday night when I was a sophomore and not home at 3 a.m.? I'm just curious. Like, what? Didn't you ask Jesus to take the wheel or somebody, because you were not doing, I couldn't believe it. Where of course, since nothing horrible happened to me on that Tuesday night or the many Tuesday
Yeah.
nights, I'd never thought about it. But when you're in the parenting position, there is this, that it brings it all back. And so I always feel like healing these wounds, and in this particular conversation, talking about nervous system regulation and kindness and nurturing and compassion and understanding, it's like thinking about yourself first and going, where am I in this whole mix when it comes to your own nervous system? And really what you're sharing, Alyssa, this is like a new way of knowing yourself through what you're talking about. And of course, we want to be able to do it for children, but I feel like as a therapist, if we don't understand it in ourselves, it'll be really hard to do it for them.
Yeah. Yeah, people often say with our work that they came for the kids and stayed for themselves.
Yeah.
That they like came in and they're like, what do I do with my kids' big feelings? And then they're like, shoot, what do I do with my big feelings?
Yeah.
And our work, in fact, the research that we did, my co-author of Tiny Humans, my first book, Lauren Stabo, we co-created the collaborative emotion processing method. We call it the CEP method.
Yes.
We researched it across the U.S., and that's what our work's really based on. And it's 5 components. 4 of them are about us. 4. 1 is adult-child interactions. The other 4 really come back to us because you are 100% right. What we found is that without the us part of this, you're scrolling through Instagram, you're listening to the podcast, you're reading the book, and you're like, yeah, this makes total sense. This sounds great. And then a kid slams a door in your face or throws something at you. And now all that's out the window unless you're doing the us part of it. You're not going to be able to access that thing that sounds great or that you learned about or that you read if you aren't practicing this for yourself.
Absolutely.
And it is a daily practice. Bless up. It is a daily practice.
I love it, though. I love the way that you've laid it out. You know, Alyssa, I feel like right now, like this book, you guys, couldn't come at a better time because there's so much confusion. And this is so solid to understand, to simply say, understanding yourself, how to support your own nervous system, how to emotionally self-regulate is going to make you a much more grounded parent with much better ability to do the same for your children. And this really is one of those things I don't think we can say, do what I say and not what I do, because it doesn't work, right?
It doesn't work. They're going to see what's repeated over and over and over again versus us modeling something and saying, do something else. What they're going to do is what's modeled for them. That's where that like repetition comes in. We might have the conversation with them to do a certain thing 3 times. But if they see us model the other thing to do, the what not to do 5 times a day, they're getting 5 reps of what not to do every day. And so if we focus in on the us, and it's not from a place of perfection at all. In fact, we talk so much about how key imperfection is that if we're striving for perfection, we're going to leave the day every day feeling like a failure. I have a master's degree here and have done research in building emotional intelligence, and I've never left the day as a teacher or a parent and been like, wow, I was perfect today. I handled everything perfectly. Not at all.
Right.
It's not the goal. It's that we know how to come back and say, man, when we were coming in from outside earlier, or when I was getting dinner ready and you asked me to help with your homework and your brother was losing his mind in the other room, I was feeling overwhelmed and I yelled or I wasn't kind, and I'm going to work on what to do when I'm overwhelmed so I can be kind to you. I'm sorry, bud. Let's try this again. And that's it. And that's enough. And when we think back to our childhood, I mean, I don't know about actually my son. I have a 4.5-year-old and he recently had a conflict with my dad. And he later on said, Pa hasn't said sorry to me. And I was like, oh yeah, bud. I have been on planet Earth for a long time and Pa's never said sorry to me. And he was like, why? And I was like, yeah. Pa grew up in a household where he learned that adults don't say sorry to kids, only kids say sorry. And he was like, why? I was like, this is some things that some people believe. You know how we talk about every household believes different things? The house that Pa grew up in, that's what he learned. And in our household, we do that differently. We believe that the adults also say sorry. Pa might not say sorry to you. And it's not because he didn't do anything wrong. It's because he doesn't know how to say sorry to you.
Yep.
And like, just buckle up. You're not going to get that apology, my friend.
Yep.
But like, that was so foreign to him that he wouldn't hear sorry from my dad. And I was like, okay, feather in your cap, Alyssa. You drop the ball every day at some point throughout the day. And my kid knows that I'm going to hold myself accountable when I do. And that I'm going to come and apologize and repair.
Yes.
And it's literally not something I ever received.
It's amazing how, I mean, and I feel like depending on your age, like most of us didn't, because there was no conscious parenting when it was like just getting through parenting, at least if you were raised in the 70s and the 80s. Not kidding. They're like, see you at 6. I'm like, I'm in third grade,
100%.
but okay. But I'm not kidding. Like, no one knew if you had homework. There were no phones. It was a really different way. Alyssa, I'm so happy that you came on the show. I'm so enthralled with the work that you're doing. I feel like it's so helpful. It's such a great time. You guys, the book is Big Kids, Bigger Feelings, Navigating Defiance, Meltdowns, and Anxiety to Raise Confident, Connected Kids. This book came out 2 days ago. You can buy it everywhere fine books are sold. Now tell us, Alyssa, where can everybody find you?
Yeah, totally. Well, thank you. I'm super stoked to get to share about it. And if you're an audiobook listener, I read the audio as well. You can find me I hang out on the gram a bunch at seed.and.so, SEW, and head to seedquiz.com and take that bad boy to just start to dive into this work. It's a really good jumping off point for folks.
Well, thank you.